Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to AI Scouted on Anfield Index Pro. I'm Dave Hendrick, joined as always by Mr. Karl Matchett. How are you, sir?
I am pretty well, thank you. I am recovered, let's say, from the end of the season and looking forward to the actual end of the season. How about you?
I am very much the same. Very, very much the same at the moment. Just sort of still a little bit shook by the end of the season. Still surprised that it's come so quickly and that we only have one game left, because it doesn't seem like that long ago we were talking about how many games Liverpool had left.
Yeah, we have really rattled through them one after another, really, hasn't it? For about 2 months now, almost every 3 to 4 days. I think we had one gap of 5, which was about our longest break in between the last 10 or so. So it has been a very full-on end of the season. And when you consider, obviously, keeping up with the title race elsewhere or the European semis that were going on with a few other interesting ties, it has been quite a non-stop couple of weeks. So it has kind of crept all of a sudden up on us. That's it. That's almost it now. Just one real game left, and on to the summer we go.
Yes, before we go anywhere else, we'll take a quick moment here and let's bring this on you. AC Milan crowned Serie A champions with a comprehensive victory over Sassuolo. Your thoughts on Milan reclaiming the throne?
Yeah, marvellous. Been a long time coming. Last year, I thought they were top until about March or so, and they looked capable, but it was really more of a challenger year than an actual going to go on and win it. They weren't quite there in terms of depth or consistency, and probably that unifying belief that they have as a team that you need to win the major trophies. Whereas this year, I think right from the start, they were that. Obviously helped a little bit by the fact that Conte had left Inter, and Juve obviously were not back to where they want to be yet, but you still got to make the most of that. You've still got to take advantage when your time comes along. And I think Milan really, really good in terms of consistency this year. 4 defeats, pretty good, I think. That would be round about your standard a few years ago in any of the top leagues outside of maybe Real Madrid, Barcelona. So I think this is a very, very good campaign for them. I think obviously the Champions League matches and group stage that they did have probably sets them in decent stead for next season as well. And don't think that they're really in any danger of the entire team breaking up. They may lose 1 or 2 along the way, but I think it's really good news that people like Darren Landers obviously has signed his new deal, and there's already been rumours of Raphael Leo heading elsewhere. But if they can keep most of that core together, that spine that they've built there now with Tomori coming in as part of it, Mike Maignan coming in and being a really big performer this season.
What a goalkeeper.
Brilliant.
What
Fantastic.
a sign. That's one of the best signings anyone made last summer. It looked like it could be catastrophic for them to lose a quote-unquote generational talent like Donnarumma, and Maignan comes in and just raises the bar at AC Milan.
Yeah, tremendous. Really, really consistent. Even like the couple of games that he did miss, he made a difference, actually. You wouldn't expect necessarily all the time that someone doesn't get to play a couple of matches and their impact as such is noted first season in as well, but they really, really did. And like I say, if they can keep that sort of spine, if you like, people like Sandro Tonali coming through this season and much, much improved in terms of his consistency of play. I don't know. I really like the age of this team overall, this group that they've put together now. Pioli, I think, only has 1 more year left on his contract, so we'll see if he gets either an extension this year or they just let it play out and see what everyone wants to do a year from now. But there's a really good group there. If they can add, I don't know, let's say it might be a centre forward, given the ages of Giroud and Zlatan. Obviously, Divok's going there. Maybe there'll be another defender is needed for Kjaer's injuries and if Romagnoli leaves. But basically they've got a really, really good group. So you can just replace the ones who leave, like Frank Kessie is going to need replacing in midfield. If you do really well with that, then there's no reason why they can't put a real good shift in next year to try and defend it.
Yeah, so Kessie is going. I think he's made a mistake there personally. But it looks like Renato Sanchez is the one they have sort of lined up to come in. Now, a lot with him depends on his fitness. But if they've got a 3-man rotation of him, Benacer and Tonali, then, they should be able to put out a good midfield most weeks. You mentioned centre-back. Sven Botman is the name that constantly gets brought up with Milan. He's spoken about how it's his dream to go to Milan. So a Tomori-Botman pairing does strike me as something that could be very, very good. Kalulu at right back, Theo at left back. That's a really strong defensive unit that can flex into a 3 when Theo goes rampaging up the left wing to beat everybody all by himself and score goals. That's a pretty strong base to build off. They've got the really good goalkeeper. I think this season he's established himself as probably one of the top 5 or 6 on the planet. They do need a centre forward. I think Divock coming in, if we're being honest, at a top club, Divock is a squad player. Now, he'll have a bigger squad role there than he has had here, but I still think he's a squad player. I think they need a starting winger as well. If Leao stays, I think they need someone to play opposite him. I know they like to have, kind of one maybe workman-like winger and Leao for balance, but I still think they could do with adding someone wide right. But a 9 does seem to be something that they want. They've been mentioned for Darwin Núñez. I think the price might be prohibitive there. But if they can get a 9, and I do wonder if maybe they might throw eyes at, a couple who've been linked to Premier League moves, like a Jonathan David or somebody like that. They could set themselves up really well with a young squad that could be prepared to maybe go on a bit of a run here in Serie A with some question marks over Juventus, some question marks over Inter over the next couple of years as some of those players age out, and a bit of uncertainty about what the plan is for the likes of Lautaro Martinez. Milan have put themselves in a really good situation. I think credit has to go to those that have built the team and to Pioli, who's done a great job. I think his coaching has been outstanding this season. I haven't always been a big fan, but I think he's done a great job this season. I think he probably warrants at least sitting down with him and discussing the framework of a new deal. I wouldn't imagine he's on mega money. He's not like a Klopp level financial commitment. I wouldn't imagine he's even an Allegri level financial commitment. So it could be something you could do a 2-year extension. And if it doesn't work, it won't completely sink you to just say, right, listen, it hasn't worked, on your way. Thanks for the league title, but we're going to go a different direction. Raphael Leo is a player you mentioned. He has been linked to the move away. Real Madrid has been mentioned in recent days. His name has also been floated with a move to the Premier League. How do you think he would fit in the Premier League? And more directly, do you think he's the type of player Liverpool could look at this summer if Sadio, for example, was to leave?
Leao?
Yes.
I love Leao. I think he's great, but I do think that at the moment he's best suited to playing
on the
wide
left
and coming in. Yeah. Obviously, we have our own recent addition who has done fairly well so far in that similar role. So I'm never going to be against signing Raphael Leo because I think he's one of the players who could be, one of Europe's top, let's say at least 10 forwards. Given another couple of years, he's really found that clinical and consistent edge to his game, which was missing this year. But of course, you want to see that again next year and again next year. And if you make the step to a more competitive squad after the season that he's just had, you run the risk of maybe a little bit of frustration or stagnation if you can't have the platform to play 40 games from the start again. And maybe that's not quite what he needs right at this moment in time, to be brutally honest, coming to Liverpool where he might only start maybe half of that number, possibly. I don't think he's there in terms of his movement just yet for playing as the number 9. He definitely doesn't drop in the same way as Sadio does, for example. He's not going to be quite as much of a physical presence as Sadio is, for example. But when he's got space ahead of him, when he's running from deep on the counter, or that he's nearly unstoppable. So I'd love to see him stay another year at Milan, be a real key figure for them. Maybe he becomes the number 9 for them that we're talking about if they don't sign somebody else, and then they look at a bit of a mix of Origi and Rebic from the left-hand side, for example. I'd be very interested to see how that goes. And of course, he gets more European games under his belt as well. And then maybe another year down the line, maybe we look at him then.
Yeah, I think that's a fair shout. Right. We have signed the player. We have confirmed that Fabio Carvalho, fellow Portuguese man of Leao, will join Liverpool this summer from Fulham. A fee of 5 million, rising potentially to 7.7 million. It is unquestionably, I think, a bargain for a player of his talent, of his age, of his profile. He's 19, he'll turn 20 in August, coming off a season where he played over 3,000 minutes for Fulham, over 2,800 of them in the Championship, which is obviously a very physical league. 10 goals and 8 assists, playing as a 10 and wide. What do you think he brings to this Liverpool team, Karl?
Quite a few things, to be fair. Versatility looks to be the first one, because he could be used in any of about 4 roles for us, to be honest. I know you don't really think he's the type to play that deeper 9 role for us, so at the very least still 3 roles. And I really like his ball carrying ability. He's really, really good manipulating it with one side to the other. He's not restricted to take people on just in one way. It's not a case of knocking it past them. It's not a case of the same trick sort of all the time, trying to step over and going on the outside on his favoured foot. He does seem to be really, really clever in terms of the positions he takes up for return passes as well. It's not always, I've seen quite a few times where he'll go to play a 1-2 and sprint past the man. They try to go with him and he just stops. And he just stops dead and finds himself suddenly in 10 metres of space, and he's got the ball back and then can do bits with it. So I very, very much like that. I've got to be honest, obviously Championship-wise is not top of my watching list, so I've still got some work to do on Fabio Carvalho, but everything that we've seen so far in terms of... everything I've seen so far, I should say, in terms of his attack and play, his build-up is really good. You can see that similarity with, I'd say, Jones and Elliott in terms of they always receive the ball head up, always looking to see where it's going to be going next. They're not afraid to attack the space at all when they're in possession. They'll happily carry it over 10, 15 metres if they're not challenged, wait for someone to step out and then play that pass in behind. I think that's a really, really clear theme over most of the attacking players that we've either signed quite young or have brought through ourselves, obviously, and even a few of the under-23s who have been in and around the side earlier on this season. People like Tyler Morton earlier on, you'll see the same thing. They receive the ball head up, they're happy to carry it if nobody's approaching them, and then they'll make that pass afterwards. As far as I'm concerned, as I've said loads and loads of times, the most important thing is movement off the ball. So he is very, very clever in that regard. He's definitely not afraid to run behind the striker when he's playing a little bit deeper. He can run the channels. He's good at cutbacks. It's not just blind crosses with him. So lots and lots of reasons to be optimistic about what he can bring.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think one of the things that really stands out to me is how brave he is with the ball and how aggressive he is in terms of his progression with the ball. Like, he's not the type of player who takes the ball in and looks for the safe option. He takes the ball in, he knows where people are, and he knows what his options are, and he will take the one that he thinks gives the team the best chance of progressing the ball, whether it be a pass or a carry or a simple layoff to somebody who can play a progressive pass. He's good at drawing defenders. He's good at making them miss and getting around them. He's got lovely balance on the ball. Like you said, he can kind of flip both directions when he's dribbling, which is always a good sign. There's a little bit of Coutinho in him, in his movement, the way he plays, the touch. Not saying he'll ever get to Phil's level before anybody says anything of that nature. But, I mean, when Phil was this age, he wasn't looking like he could become a player who was going to be worth 147 million either. So I do think he's one that we'll be very careful with. I think he's one that has definitely been brought in with a very clear plan on what he's going to be and how we will use him. I expect to see him play quite a bit off the left next season. But I do think the long-term plan with him could be to move him into a number 8 position and have him more involved in the build-up. Or if we do shift shape and go to a 4-2-3-1, and Neil Jones mentioned this recently, if Liverpool do go with the kind of 4-forward lineup that we've played at times, he could be the one that plays as that number 10 and everything kind of moves around him, and that could be the best use of him. His partnership with Mitrovic was really impressive this season, and his anticipation of where to be is one of the standout things. Like, you'll often see players react to a cross, whereas he's anticipating the cross. He's proactively making a run. And if the ball goes where he is, he's always in space. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But he's not, because he's 5'8" and he's quite slight, he's not going to win aerial duels with centre-backs. So what he does really well is he finds little pockets of space in dangerous areas where he can hurt teams. Another thing that strikes me as well is that he performed well against good teams this season. Like, some of his standout performances were against Luton, who were a playoff team, Millwall, who had a solid top half season, Huddersfield, who are in the playoff final. Like, he's not just someone that went stat padding against the bad teams and that didn't really show up against the good teams. He performed consistently well against the better teams in the division. And I think that's a good sign. He also obviously scored against Man City in the FA Cup, which again, to me, is a good sign. No massive injury issues. He had a toe injury that kept him out for, I think, about 6 weeks during the season. So maybe that's just something to keep an eye on, but it seems to have cleared up and he hasn't had any problems. He played basically the entire second half of the season with no problems. He's also obviously been included in recent Portuguese under-21 squads, having made the decision to play for Portugal. He also had the option to play for England, but he went with the country of his birth. So I do think he's someone with a big future in front of him, a high ceiling. And I think it's a little bit of a coup for us to get him, because from the sounds of things, he had quite serious offers from both Benfica and Porto to return to Portugal and be a big part of what they're doing. And he made the decision to join Liverpool. And I think that, goes to show that we are becoming a club that attracts talented players. Younger players are seeing a real pathway at Liverpool. He obviously knows Harvey Elliott, having spent, I think, 5 years at Fulham with him. So there's a relationship there. I think it's all positive with this signing. And Neil Jones has said as well that the plan is to keep him. It's not to loan him out. He is going to be part of the first team picture. So I'd say, if we're just writing names down, he probably goes down for next season as, the backup to Diaz in that left wing position, who'll also see some minutes in other positions.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair, to be honest. Obviously, we've got people like Jota can go that side as well, and if he's still around, Mane obviously will still play some games there.
Yes.
But I do think that, they're either the right side, midfield, you might get a little bit of game time there, depending on who's injured and who else we buy this summer. But if not, then I think probably both sides of the attack, to be fair. I could see him playing a bit of a role there, because even if you think from the right-hand side, if he's not going to do as much of cutting in and shooting, he is still capable of coming in on that left foot, like we've said. And he's creative as well. As it's not just a case of being a shot monster type of inside forward, is it? It's very, very head up, looking for the good, clever passes, the cutbacks, the final little touch to get someone else on the ball in the box as well. I mean, you mentioned it's not stat padding, but across the board, he's pretty good actually in terms of all kinds of attacking options, almost 2.0 to 2.5 for each of key passes, dribbles, and shots per 90, which is first season, first full campaign where you've played 3,000 minutes almost. That's pretty damn good for a teenager.
It is. And the other thing that struck me about him last season, when he got a few games for Fulham in the Premier League, was he didn't look out of place. He didn't look overawed by the whole thing. He looked like someone that belonged. And he started their last 3 games. He got a goal against Southampton. He played against Southampton, United and Newcastle. So, United last season were at least decent. Newcastle were quite physical, and Southampton were a high-pressing unit. And he was able to make it look like he belonged in all of those games. And I think that's a promising sign as well. He's not someone that's going to be overawed by anything. I like the fact as well that when he was going to do the deal in January and he was going to agree to sign for us in January. He was insistent that he wanted to go back to Fulham on loan and he wanted to see out the season. I think that shows that he, A, wants to play, and B, had real loyalty to the club that had developed him. And C, he's a winner. He wanted that promotion. He wanted to win the league with Fulham. I think that's a very strong mentality in a young player, because a lot of young players would just go, oh, good luck, see you later, I'm away off to Liverpool. I'm going to go over here and you do whatever it is you're doing down there. But he was adamant he wanted to stick with Fulham for the remainder of the season and ensure that they got their promotion. So I think that all speaks well to who he is as a person. I think the big winners in this are Balham Football Club in Wandsworth. They're going to receive a hefty chunk of money. I think it's over £1 million they'll get from this deal. And that should sustain that football club for maybe 2 years, 3 years maybe, which is also
having played on the same field as they do quite often, more than that, I'd say.
Oh, really? Well, that's
Yes.
but isn't that brilliant though? Like that, you know,
tremendous.
And that's how football should work. That's how it should work. That when players who have spent a couple of years at these, you know, combined counties league teams in the youth academies or whatever, or they're not even academies, it's just underage teams, that, you know, when one of those players gets poached by a bigger club and then that club sells them on, that they get their share for the work that they've done. So delighted for them, delighted for Fulham. I think it speaks really well of the Fulham Academy that in the last couple of years, Liverpool have gone there and poached 2 players. It's a bit disappointing for Fulham, obviously, that they haven't been able to tie Harvey and Carvalho down long term, but at the same time, it does speak well to what they're doing there and that their methods of developing players and that their talent identification in that is working well for them. And if they can find a way to get better at it and you know, really start locking those players down, it could be something that Fulham can lean into for the future as a way to become, you know, not necessarily a feeder club, but certainly a club that all the top clubs are looking at and thinking, well, who've they got now? Who can we go and look at? Because for a long time, young players at Fulham were sort of pushed to one side, and now they're getting more and more of an opportunity. That's Sessegnon, Harvey, and Carvalho in the last couple of years.
And not just that, but go, 5 years further down the Fulham academy system, and if you've got someone who is trying to decide between them and maybe Arsenal or QPR, whoever it is, they've got a clear pathway there. They've shown that, one, they'll use them, two, they'll develop them in the right way so that very, very good clubs further up the chain would be interested in them if they play well, and, of course, that they would be reasonably willing to sell if there's not going to be too many obstacles. I know both of these obviously out of contract makes it a little bit different, but they've at least got the track record of showing that they can leave the club to really, really big Premier League clubs if they do the business on the pitch.
That's the thing. Like, the next time a Declan Rice gets released from Chelsea or Arsenal or whoever and is looking for their next club, Fulham can be right in that mix and say, well, look, Ryan Sessegnon, Harvey Elliott, Fabio Carvalho, look what they've gone on to do. We haven't held them back. We didn't block their transfers, because there's some negative feeling in the football community towards West Ham for supposedly, blocking Declan Rice's chances of a move by putting a massive price tag on him. And they can use that to their advantage and say, look, we understand our place in the food chain. And if you develop well and we get a good offer for you, we won't ask for the sun, moon, and the stars. We will sell you at a fair price. Come to us. We have a clear pathway. You'll get minutes. You'll get to play in the Premier League at an early age. Because one thing they've been really good at, Sessegnon was in the first team at 16. Harvey, the same. And Carvalho, I think, was he 17 when he made his first appearance? So, they can point to that track record and say, look, and when the time comes and a bigger club comes in, we're happy to let you go as long as the price works for us and it won't be crazy. So all of these things are positive for Fulham. All of them are positive for Balham FC, and it's all very positive for Liverpool that we've been able to snap up another very, very promising young player who joins a growing core of young players at Liverpool when we factor in Harvey, Curtis, Tyler Morton, Ibu and Trent, obviously that bit older and more established, but still very young players. Kate Gordon was one that was quite a coup for us to get because United offered him a lot more money than we offered. There's Musalewski, there's Fraundorf, there's Oakley Cannonier. There's a lot of really talented young players now at Liverpool that could potentially make their mark on the first team in the next couple of years. And another one that could be on the way is Calvin Ramsey from Aberdeen. 18-year-old Scottish right back, has had a very, very good season. I think he was voted the best young player in Scotland this season. Scotland just seem to be in a bit of a groove at the minute for producing fullbacks. Nothing else is good, but the fullbacks are good. They've got Robbo, obviously, Kieran Tierney, obviously. Aaron Hickey's a massive talent. I really like Patterson, who went to Everton, and now Ramsey. And it does look like Ramsey will be joining us for around 5 million as well, giving Trent potentially a long-term backup. And maybe in the future there is a Trent into midfield move. Maybe Klopp sees that, or Landers sees that as a possibility, and Ramsey could be one who develops in that role. Have you seen or heard much of Ramsey?
No, barely anything. I think I saw one game of him just after we were linked. I switched on just to watch it in between two other matches that I was watching. So I saw a little bit of him, but that's about it. I don't really have too much to comment on him, to be fair. I think it's positionally interesting, obviously, because it might speak to some moves that are made this year. Nico Williams, obviously, there's got to be a bit of interest because he's done well at Fulham. He's really flying with Wales, obviously, and he's not going to get the game time here that he needs. But when he did get a few games before he went on loan, he was much improved. I think we can see that there's quite a big step having been taken from Nico. So fair play to him. Hopefully we get a decent fee as well.
Yes, for certain. Much better this season than he had been. Definitely did well at Fulham. Look, he was getting in that Fulham team over Kenny Tete, who's a Dutch international. So that's no small feat either. So credit to him, and I hope he does go on and have a good career. He's certainly a good lad. He's certainly a good player. I think the case is just he's not quite of the level required to play for Liverpool, and at his age, he wants to be starting, and that's where he falls down. If he was happy to be a career backup, he'd probably be kept. Like I'd imagine they'd be more than happy to keep him and have him as a backup for the next decade. But the fact is, he's a Welsh international. He wants to play regularly. And again, I think it shows a strong mindset on his behalf. Right, that is that. Let's move on then and talk about some other bits and bobs. Aston Villa have confirmed the signing of Bubakar Kamara from Marseille on a Bosman-free transfer. This is potentially the signing of the summer, Karl. It's a big surprise that they were able to pull this off, considering some of the other clubs that he was linked with. I think he'd comfortably walk into Manchester United and start. I think he could start in a back three for Chelsea or Spurs. I think he'd start in midfield for Arsenal over Granit Xhaka. He was linked with Atletico Madrid. He was linked with Milan. He was linked with Inter Milan. He could have stayed at Marseille and played Champions League football next season. But he's made a decision to go to Aston Villa. It's a big, big coup for Steven Gerrard.
Massive. I assume this was in the works or nearly done even a couple of weeks ago for it to be done so quickly after the end of the season. They've obviously decided he's one we've got to get. No messing about, no waiting, no seeing if we can get a decent price a bit later on or anything like that. They've just gone in and done the job. And I think it's very, very important because the way that we see Gerrard obviously haven't been playing either the 4-3-3 or the diamond. He really wants that capable, consistent, really reliable holder midfield figure who obviously now is able to drop between the back three completely naturally. Technically, I think in that midfield zone, I wouldn't say his range is immaculate, like in terms of spraying all over the pitch, but his consistency in the simplistic is not quite ridiculously first and foremost, very, very good defender. Positional play has been really good this year, playing as the holder midfielder. I think, was it was it last season? I forgot. It feels like a lot longer ago now, but I think it was like 18 months ago when we were linked with Karl, and he was his centre-back partner at the time. And he was playing really well, and it was almost a surprise that we were linked with Karl rather than Kamara, for example. But I do think that this midfield role suits him at the moment. Maybe later on in his career he goes back to defence again. But I really like seeing him in the DM sort of spot. And again, I think a lot of it is to do with the team setup, the players around him in terms of quite a lot of movement and energy off the ball, quite a lot of adventurous runnings from fullback. So presumably that's more of the same from Gerrard and Villa next season in that regard.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I have been for a few years. He's someone I've brought up on the transfer committee pod a number of times. I think our hesitancy on him at centre-back would have just been his size. He's not the biggest in the world, but as a midfielder, as a holding midfielder, he's exactly the profile you'd want. He's about 6 foot, he's strong. He's not an explosive athlete, but he does cover ground very well. Reads the game excellently. Like you said, positional play is outstanding. Came through into that Marseille team, played left back, played right back, moved into the centre, and then it was Villas-Boas who thought he's the holding midfielder I need, and put him there. And he has just gone from strength to strength. He would have been a great Fabinho backup / long-term successor if we'd wanted to move that way. But I'd imagine with Villa offering him a guaranteed starter position and probably a sizable wage as well, he's gone there. I think he brings natural leadership to the team as well. This guy was walking around the velodrome wearing the armband at 18. Like, this guy has no fear. Nothing puts him off. He's just got such a strong mentality. And I think it's a brilliant signing for Villa. Like you say, with the energy and movement they'll put round him in midfield, and he'll just be able to sweep up behind McGinn and Ramsey and Chukwuemeka and whoever else they've got playing as their number 8s. I do wonder if this means that they will go, if they'll still look at a Basuma or a Phillips, maybe for a more box-to-box role, or if this is maybe just their one big addition in midfield.
I would say that the Basuma would be if Luiz goes, because he's obviously been pushed forward as to one of the side midfielders, especially when they play Diamond, and they've had either Marvelous Nakamba or Calum Chambers as the holder then in behind, because Luiz obviously gives you that extra energy, a bit more athleticism, a bit more ball winning higher upfield as well, and then still have the defensive midfielder behind him. So I think that this is their big one that they wanted to anchor the midfield as such. But I could definitely still see them going to get a Phillips or a Basuma if Luiz does depart.
Yeah. I'd be looking to keep Luiz. Now, I know he's been a bit inconsistent, but I do think if he gets a full season as an 8, I do think you'll see a different level from him. I think he is very, very good. I think that pairing of him and Kamara from a defensive point of view will be very, very good. And then obviously McGinn is a bit more attack-minded, a bit more progressive. So that is a midfield 3. And then obviously Ramsey, Sanson, Chukwuemeka, those 3 can also play the number 8 positions. And Nakamba likely sticks around as the backup 6. Though obviously he's very, very limited in what he can do, but lots of energy and in a 2-man midfield next to Kamara, I think Nakamba wouldn't be too bad either. So great signing for Villa. They obviously needed to address that position. They've got a couple more big ones to address. I think they desperately need one in attack. They desperately need a left-sided centre-back. And if Gerrard can get those in, then it's just movement around the fringes, trying to find good squad players, a backup right back. You might want a backup left back as well, depending what happens with Matt Targett. But this is one of his 3 big needs that he had for the summer, and they've boxed it off really, really early. And I genuinely don't think they could have done better. As good as Phillips is, as good as Basuma is, this guy is quite a bit younger than both, and they've gotten him on a Bosman. He is the type of player that in 2-3 years I could see us looking at if the time comes to replace Fabinho. I think he's the type that could develop into somebody we'll look at and go, that's who we want.
Yeah, it depends very much how dominant he proves to be, doesn't it, in this sort of step up. We've seen a few players who we could have gone for, even people like Raphinha. He was clearly a very, very impactful player in France. He was clearly technically capable of being one of the top creators and everything, and really, really good combination of shooting and creating and ball carrying and all the rest of it, aggressive as well off the ball. But we seemingly would prefer to watch these players have another year in England as well first, so another couple of years sometimes. So maybe for Kamara, I do think that we maybe look for a bit more progressive ball players, and especially if we do go to a two-man midfield, again, I would expect us to want someone who is more complete than he is at the moment, maybe in terms of forward thinking passing. But 2 years under Gerrard, we don't know how well that coaching's going to go. He could be a lot more to his game. He could be asked to be a lot more expansive. He could bring something like ball carrying, for example. He's pretty calm and composed on the ball. We don't see him carrying it too much or taking people on, but he's certainly got good acceleration. He can get moving into space. So there's a lot of good development which can be had in a player's game across a year or 2 year period when they go to a new league and a new team and all the rest of it. So definitely one to watch for next season. Really, really good as he is, and a lot of potential to get better, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of potential to get much better. And it'll be interesting to see him work under Gerrard, and certainly interesting to see if this can prove a big help in fixing Villa's fairly poor defensive record. We've been asked to do a team of the season of Premier League newcomers, and we'll finish up with this. I think we'll just do a combined 11 of Premier League newcomers, so that can be either players who have been signed and come into the Premier League for this season, or came up with promoted teams. Obviously, the three promoted teams were Norwich, Watford and Brentford, and I'm not really sure there'd be many from Norwich or Watford that would make this team, but certainly Brentford might have a couple of people worthy of mention. So if we just want to do a combined team, we'll just start with the goalkeeper. Jose Sa, I think, would be certainly one contender. Would you have anyone else in mind for that role?
Probably not. I mean, what if a goalkeeper is transferred between English club to English club? Is that a newcomer, or does that not count? It's just new people into the Premier League.
New people into the Premier League.
Yeah, okay, so it's obviously quite limited then anyway. I don't think there's too much competition apart from the promoted guys, is there? So, yeah, we'll go with him.
Okay, so that's Jose Sa as the goalkeeper. What about right back then? Is there anyone that stood out to you this season who's newly into the division, either as a promoted player or a player bought in from abroad or from the lower league, that's kind of stood out to you as someone that to keep an eye on long term?
Now, what about revolutionary mid-season signing Nathan Patterson and his impact at Everton? Is that too mean? Sorry, is it too early?
That might be a bit too early. Okay, could Tino Livramento count here, because he hadn't played in the Premier League before, and obviously joined Southampton from Chelsea, and I have to say I was so impressed by him across the course of the season. I thought he just looked like a player with a massive, massive future ahead of him.
Yeah, first half of the season he was spectacular, wasn't he? He made I think he was quite similar in the impact that Tariq Lamptey made in the second half of the 2020 season when he went to Brighton, obviously, and then went straight into their team. Really, really proactive player, very good going forward into the final third. Who else have we got? I mean, Emerson at Spurs, I think he's been hit and miss at best. He's improved under Conte, obviously, in terms of positional work, but I don't think he's great with his end product or anything like that. I don't think there are too many others who have been stand out, to be honest.
Yeah, so if we go with him, I think left back, Cucurella's the one real standout for me. I thought he had an outstanding season.
Yeah,
I really did think he had an outstanding season.
Yeah, Nouri obviously as well, who we've mentioned a few times. I thought, to be fair, Dimitri Januar started the season really well for Norwich, but I'm not sure what happened in terms of him falling out of the team or falling out of favour, or whether it was just because he was part of a team that conceded 16 goals every weekend that he just fell away, basically. But a bit disappointed, basically, to what we've seen from him in the end. Nouri maybe hasn't played as much as Cucurella, obviously, so maybe that counts as
he was there last year, wasn't he?
He was on loan, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, well, if you're not counting that, fair enough then. Junior Firpo, obviously not not really done too much, I don't think. He's not been that good. Mikolenko's been decent over the second half of the season. I think that'd probably be about it, to be fair.
Yeah, I think Cucurella is the one standout. I think over the course of the year, he's been excellent. What about centre back then? Because there's definitely a few options here. Okay, give me yours.
We're going to go with big Ibu Konate.
Absolutely, without question.
And almost as big Mark Guehi.
Oh, Mark Guehi. I am surprised you haven't picked Christian Romero.
I would have, but I think Konate has been just better than him individually. And also, I think I would just pick Guehi over him for consistency, to be honest, and importance of the team.
Guehi has been great. He has been great for
really,
Palace this season.
Really consistent. And when you consider that it was a step up in football level as well, and towards the end of the season, when obviously Romero's picked up injury and has missed a few games there, and that, I wouldn't say the Spurs didn't miss him at all, but you could see that they still had the structure in place there. They still had Davinson Sanchez to come in. I think, if they'd have lost Anderson or Guehi himself, then Palace would have struggled a lot more than they did. So I think for impact on the team, the season that he's had, his age, obviously, I expect good things from Romero. I expected him to be even a little bit better than he was, to be perfectly honest. I think he was better last season in Serie A than he was this season with Spurs. First half of the season was obviously a bit of a difficult start, and the team was a bit inconsistent. So I think there's more to go from Romero next season. And I think I would just about give it to the Palace man instead.
I can get on board with that. We'll go with those two. Konate yes.
Can I throw in a right back?
Okay.
Tomiyasu?
Yeah, so I was talking. On 2-footed today, I picked my team of the year, and I picked Romero as my second centre back with Virgil. And when I was doing my non-top, I did a non-top 4 team as well, and I was looking at right backs, and I really did want to pick Tomiyasu because I think he's been outstanding for that Arsenal team, but he missed a lot of football. I mean, what did he play? 21 games. He missed a lot of football this season with calf issues. He has been outstanding, and I'd happily have him. If you want to go him over Livramento, you won't get any pushback off from me. I think he's been so good for them. He really reminds me of like a more cultured Branislav Ivanovic, that sort of tall, dominant figure at right back who can also fill in at centre back, but he gets forward well. He's good on both feet, dominates in the air, good 1v1. Yeah, I think Tomiyasu's excellent.
I'll tell you what, have a look and see how many Tino played as well, because obviously with the ACL, he's been out for quite a while now. So whoever's played most games can go in. They had
3 fullbacks they were rotating. So Tino played 28. Let's look at minutes. Tino's minutes this season, he played 2,000. Tino played more minutes. He played 2,202 minutes in the league. Whereas Tomiyasu can't have played that much because he played 21 games in the league. So, we'll go with Tino, but I definitely think doff at the cap to Tomiyasu, and I'm hopeful he can stay fit next season and show what he's capable of. Right, midfield. I think this one's tough because I think there's a few options here. Would there be anyone for you that just immediately stands out as has to be in?
I'm having a quick scroll through. I'm going to guess that you don't think any of the Brentford boys did enough consistency-wise.
Well, I would say I was really impressed by Vitali Yanov this season.
I think he was really good for the first half of the season, but I think he
did dip then. He did dip. Whereas I think Norgard had a decent first half, then a poor run, a flat-out poor run. But then when Eriksson came in, that midfield seemed to get a whole new lease of life and did seem to go up a level.
Are we going like 4-4-2 or something like that?
Oh, yeah, whatever.
I'd put Maxwell Cornet in as a possible left winger then. I think he's been good.
He has been good. Could I interest you in Michael Elise as the right winger in a 4-4-2?
Yeah, happy with that.
Because I think he's been really good. He hasn't played enough, so I'm not going to make a case for him, but Moises Caicedo of Brighton has really impressed me in the last, say, month and a half. So I think he's one to keep an eye on for next season.
Mid-season signing, Bruno Gomes.
Yes. I actually think the two centre midfielders might both be January signings, if I'm being honest. I think Rodrigo Bentancur is worth a mention here as well.
Yeah, he did play very well.
I thought he made a massive difference. And I thought he gave Højbjerg sort of a new lease on life as well. I don't think any of the Norwich lads were good. Leeds didn't bring anyone in. Everton didn't bring anyone in. Villa didn't sign a central midfielder. But Jacob Ramsey probably played last year, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Yes,
so neither of the two big signings last summer, Sancho or Grealish, get a look in.
No, not even. If we were doing a flop of this season team, I think Grealish walks in. I think it's outrageous that he's been included in the England squad when James Maddison's had a much better season than him and plays a similar enough role. I've
also just realised I'm not going to be able to get Maxwell Cornet in the team.
Why?
Well,
because Luis Diaz has to be left winger.
Yeah,
that's a very good point. Luis Diaz has to be the left winger, so you could play Cornet up front if you want.
Yeah, I could do. Yeah, why not?
But we won't. Diaz left wing, Elise right wing, Bentancur and Gomes as the centre midfield pairing. I think that's really strong. So up front, then, what have you got?
I'm thinking a big Phil Coutinho in behind. Probably not Romelu Lukaku.
Anybody but Big Rom.
I did consider going for a Max Cornet Wout Weghorst partnership, but that'd just be taking it too far, to be fair.
It would. It'd be a bit too much now. I've been really impressed with Brohia this season at Southampton. So I think he's worth mentioning. I think Ivan Toney had a quietly very good season. 12 goals, 5 assists. Would have easily been double figures assists if his teammates could finish. To be fair, most of the big attackers didn't do well. But I would say... Go ahead.
Well, Kulusevski for a mid-season one, but I'd maybe go Coutinho behind Toney.
See, I'd probably go Kulusevski behind Toney. I think Kulusevski's been better than Coutinho. I think Phil had that really hot start and then just sort of drifted off and then turned up, final day of the season.
We'll go Kula then. I like them both. That's fine.
Yeah, I think Kula's been great. And he's such an unusual player in like his build and how he runs. Like he's very upright and he's no right foot at all. I'd say Kulusevski and Toney's probably the front pairing, to be fair. Yep. I don't think anyone else really stood out. So that is that then. That is our newcomer team of the season. Is there anything else you want to hit before we go?
Yeah, we've just had Guy in the chat actually telling us that while we're recording RMC are going strong on Tchouameni having picked Real Madrid as his summer option. So what do you think and alternatives you'd like?
Yes, so I have also had the same news. He has chosen the money. It seems to be the way. It's a disappointment. It is a disappointment because he would have been a transformative player for us. I think he would have been a massive addition in the midfield. I don't know that there's anyone out there who's like a straight up alternative in terms of being able to play as a box-to-box 8 and as a number 6, but what our need is more for that box-to-box 8. I would say the two I'd look at really strongly would be Matthias Nunes of Sporting, who I do really like, and Kone of Borussia Mönchengladbach. I really like him. I think he's a massive, massive talent. He's 21. I think he's got huge potential to be just a wrecking ball all over the pitch. So I'd probably go him. I'd probably go Kone from Gladbach. But I do wonder, considering what the price we were apparently willing to pay for Tchouameni was, I do wonder if we can now turn around and maybe buy 2 midfielders instead, because I actually think we need 2 with Milner and Ox possibly leaving. And even if Milner stays, he should play a lot less next season. So I do wonder if maybe we could look at, say, Kone as a box-to-box option, and then maybe someone in that holding role as well to develop. I'm absolutely in love with Amadou Onana from Lille. I think he's fantastic. I like Czech Doucouré that you've mentioned a few times. Jean Onana from Bordeaux is another one, but I think Amadou Onana would be the one I'd look for in that role, with Claudio Kone from Gladbach as the box-to-box option.
Maybe we're going to have to do an entire podcast on options for midfield, like for each of the 3 roles, I think, and we'll give a bit more explanation and detail on some of the ones that we come up with.
Yes, I think that is definitely something that we should do. Rightio then, we will leave it at that. Have you got anything you want to plug?
End of season stuff on the Independent. I've done quite a lot of stuff looking at all 20 teams, and there will be obviously a scouted head of Real Madrid looking at their tactics, and specifically, if we get a chance, we'll do an extra one looking at maybe Real Madrid as a club as well, and the Liverpool, Real Madrid, all those kind of storylines and side stories and rivalry bits and all the rest of it, and maybe Tchouameni news is just another layer of that.
Yes, it is. Rightio, we will leave it there, and we will speak to you later in the week. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index, and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.